All right. Back for episode. I don't even know. We're getting far. I think it's like 8 or 7. But this episode will be I have devised a list of all of the best teachers that I have found over the last couple of years. And so yeah, we're just going to talk about that a little bit. Just get right into it. Obviously, okay, hold on. I've got books here as well. We're gonna go over the best teacher first of all, which would be Alan Watts. I guess I should have done a little more research. I should have found out when he died, but he was an older guru who lived in, I think, California most of his life in the 50s or 60s. He died a while ago, but I mean, all things spiritual and emotional, I think I took from him. He really just had a different perspective on life that not many people have. He was a linguist, and so the way he explains things was always it was perfect. It always made sense. It was always understandable, but it was like super complex at the same time, and it made him a great writer, made him a great teacher. My favorite quotes, some of my favorite, I'll say he has so many, it's so hard to pick a few, but in Behold the Spirit, he said, "He who prays best does not know he is praying, for prayer is a self-forgetful absorption of God." And this is, okay, I could never, ever pick, I don't know if you can see them from way over there. I could never pick between these two. Behold the Spirit by Alan Watts and Become What You Are easily my two favorites that I've read from him. I've only read 5 or 6 of his books. I've got a few more that I've been meaning to read, but this book, Behold the Spirit, is the best. Book, any sort of digestible knowledge. This was the best version of it that related to religion and mysticism. This was a great read from start to finish, and it took me a long time because it's just every page is worth the read, like worth 2 reads. And I'll definitely reread this soon. I'll probably honestly do a podcast just on this book, or an episode just on this book, not a whole podcast, but let's see. Another one of his quotes is, "He who sees God not everywhere sees him truly nowhere." And I love these quotes because his biggest idea, especially in this book and in a lot of his writings, is that God and the Tao and all of these things, they're in everything. And it's only the realization of them that you need. Like, he talks about in this book how the people who follow God best are very unique and creative because they don't make the symbolism for God the focus of their life. It's like they just live. They just live their life, Like they realize their union with God and then they just go about their business, And that's a big part of just like, well, and it's not even like in a way that's like unforgiving or like unthankful, or ungrateful, I should say. It's like that's what we were put here to do, is live. It would be kind of like cruel of a God to put us here and then make us like worship him for putting us here. You know what I mean? Like, defeats the purpose. But yeah, no, the way he teaches, and also just the way he combines all of his teachings to really reveal the simpler things, the digestible things, the things you can implement extremely easily with almost no effort, it's so important to who you can become, he's a great person to learn from because of the way he depicts things, really. no one else can break it down the way that he can, in my opinion. Not anyone I've ever found. So, another quote by him: "The more sedulously we avoid death, the more certainly we avoid life." And I like that one because I feel like death is we fear death. We fear death. A lot of people fear death. I don't think I fear death, but I mean, I fear it because like it's gonna be painful. It's gonna suck. It's gonna and it sucks to see that happen around you. It's awful, but at the same time, it's part of life. If we didn't die, what's the alternative? There isn't really an alternative. To live a life, you have to die, and it's just there's God in that too. There's divinity in that too, and I remember one of the things he talked about in this book was, wait, no, I can find this. I might know exactly which page is. Come on. I found it. All right, I'm going to read this page here. Assuming further, okay, so this is about God's love. About God's true love. Okay. Assuming further that God is love, the goal of love is always union with its object. If man is therefore a creation and an object of the divine love, union with God is likewise the true end of man. The true end of man from the divine standpoint. From the same standpoint, the true end of all creatures, not man alone, is union with God. But only in man has the end become conscious. Only man can love God consciously. Other creatures are drawn toward him blindly and have no will in the matter. The conscious love of God is only possible for a free soul. In one sense, man loves God inevitably because the finite naturally and necessarily hungers or moves toward the infinite. But by its own power, it can never reach and embrace the infinite. However far you may climb and soar, you can never touch the sky. Though natural love, eros, points to God, he is beyond its reach. But man is capable of another kind of love which can reach God. And this, following Nygren's useful distinction, we will call agape. The difference between the two is that whereas eros is a possessive hunger, a desire to swallow God, agape is the free, conscious, and deliberate desire to give oneself to God. Man is capable of both eros and agape, for he desires both to magnify himself and to lose himself, to swallow the infinite and to plunge into the infinite. But such absolute self-surrender is a power of freedom alone. Love under compulsion is eros, never agape, which is why successful marriage could never be contracted under the influence of an aphrodisiac. The consent for so deep a union of souls must be willing. Since therefore man is capable of agape, the type of union with God for which he is destined is of a peculiarly high order. A union of mutual love, a spiritual marriage. The union of man with God is to be voluntary on both sides. The union of lesser creatures with God is voluntary on God's side alone. But eros cannot reach its goal without agape. And so he talks about how if God is love and God loves us as not necessarily as an entity, but as a continuous action, kind of like as a verb and a noun at the same time. Our true end, death, would be union with God, an act of true love, which is like, because, and he talks about that in marriage between people, like you have to fold into one another. You can't have any sort of protrusion in the matter. You kind of have to just be one. I think that's very difficult for people nowadays. I think it's a great teaching, but let's see. So we've got Behold the Spirit. That book is on the necessity of mystical religion, which which I think that was an amazing book. I can't praise that book enough. Become What You Are is a little different. It's a little more about Taoism and Zen Buddhism, it felt like, for the most part. I mean, this one is, I would say read Behold the Spirit first, and then read Become What You Are. Because I think there are two sides to the religious coin, and one of them is very lighthearted. It's kind of that, it's tough to say because in both, like, the peak of them is still the same, like Nirvana, all these things. I just think that, like, Christianity and the Western religions dive a lot more into, like, law and morality and stuff like that. But in Eastern religions, it seems like, or at least like in Buddhism and Taoism, it seems like they come naturally, right? Because, I mean, and they do, once you understand suffering, once you understand the oneness of it all, you really lose your ego, and it's very easy to empathize with people, I think. But at the same time, I do see the point for law and logic, and stuff like that. So, because not everyone is going to accept that, it's like you have to master. Ooh, there's a quote on the board here. Be as soft as a dove and as wise as a serpent. It's exactly that. It's like you have to find the balance between law and trust, But this book was great for that. Let me see if I can find a quote or two in here. I saw some highlighting. Change is a symptom of the presence of life. The morning glory blooms for an hour, yet it differs not at heart from the great pine which lives 1,000 years. But oh my God, I love this one. But the fabric of life is such that one broken thread may work immeasurable ruin. Another one says, can we say then that the governing of a man's universe is less important because it is different in size? Interesting. I haven't read this one in a while, to be honest with you. Let me see. Lightness of touch. He speaks on the importance of that. And in this one he says, this is especially so when the unenlightened man attains to any degree of responsibility. He develops a heaviness of touch, a lack of abandon, a stiffness which indicates that he is using his dignity as stilts to keep his head above adversity. On the next page he says, for man suffers only because he takes seriously what the gods made for fun. See, and it's I don't know, I found it good to think that way most of the time. But I think also when you have a real serious goal, which I think most people, I think you should. I think you should have a serious goal, And so I feel like when you have a serious goal, you kind of have to put that away a little bit, And that's when that law comes in. That's when you do things you don't want to do and you have discipline and you make decisions you might not always want to. No authentic wisdom can be imitated. Oh, this is when I also learned about then we are back. So my camera was full yesterday, so I had to move everything off and clear it out. So that's why there will be a part 1 and a part 2 to this one. I believe we were here. I was talking about, we're going through Alan's book. Just reading some of the stuff I highlighted, and he said, no authentic wisdom can be imitated. And then this is right about when I cut out, I think, is when I started discussing how this book, Become What You Are, is where I first learned the term nirvana, and that it means to despirate, to breathe out, to give up the ghost. And I think that to give up the ghost is a really interesting way to put that, because that's also used in Christianity as well, right? To give up the ghost. And so it's just so interesting how all of them overlap so much. Oh, this take was great on he referred mankind to, or man's life through time, as a bird in the sky, and how we really don't leave any path or trace, and there's nothing behind us, and there's no way to tell exactly where we're going. We're just there. And someone who moves like this follows this Chinese poem that says, "Entering the forest, he does not disturb a blade of grass. Entering the water, he does not cause a ripple. The bamboo shadows sweep the stairs, but stir no dust." And this form of detachment is actually kind of more so just a removal of the contrast between the two things and unifying of their existence. Right? So they don't happen like one after another. They're just happening in conjunction and existing the way a bird flies through the sky. On the next page, he said, "But there is no way. Nobody knows the way. The only way that there is the path of a bird through the sky. Now you see it, now you don't. Not a trace left. Life is not going anywhere. There is nothing to be attained. All striving and grasping is so much smoke in the clutch of a dissolving hand. We are all lost, kicked off into the void the moment we were born, and the only way to fall is into oblivion." And he goes on to say how this is, it sounds scary and terrible, but it's only because it's a half-truth. And the other half of that truth cannot be described, imagined, or thought about. In words, this is the last word. Everyone is dissolving into nothing, and no one can help it. Is it just possible for a moment to realize that without jumping to conclusions, without crying pessimism, despair, or nihilism? Is it too impossible to admit that all our well-laid traps for happiness are just so many ways of kidding ourselves that by meditation, psychoanalysis, Dianetics, Raja Yoga, Zen Buddhism, or mental science, we are somehow going to save ourselves from the final plop into nothing? And so lesson 1 is, I give up. I always loved this teaching because it's the most off-putting, and it doesn't seem to make any sense, and it seems so scary, and like it seems to go against everything that you were ever taught, right? Because everything that you can be taught is an attempt to grasp something, or like formalize or stabilize or objectify something, like to try and give it form and meaning in the world. And this is just the complete opposite of that. It's like there's no point. I might just continue reading this page, honestly. That was a great page. Yeah, I'm just going to keep going because it ends on the next page anyway. So I guess this is like reading time right now. What happens now? You find yourself in what is perhaps a rather unfamiliar state of mind, just watching, not trying to get anything, not expecting anything, not hoping, not seeking, not trying to relax, just watching, without purpose. I should say nothing about what comes next. To hold out hope, to promise a result, spoils the whole thing. The final word must be, there is no hope, no way. Yet there is no harm in just one more word about what lies on the other side of despair, provided we all understand that this is something on the other side of despair cannot be hoped for, and is in any case thrust away by hoping. The proverb says, "A watched pot never boils." We are all familiar with the many involuntary acts of the human body, which never happen so long as we are trying to make them happen. So long as we are anxious about them, going to sleep, remembering a forgotten name, or under certain circumstances, sexual excitation. Well, there is something like this which happens upon the sole condition that we are not trying to make it happen, that we have realized quite clearly that we cannot make it happen. In Zen, it is called Satori, sudden awakening. Perhaps we can see now the reason for the double meaning in the metaphor of the bird's path in the sky. Just as the bird leaves no trace, no record of its flight upon the void, so human desire can gain nothing out of life. But to realize this is at once to become the sage, since the greatest wisdom lies on the other side, immediately on the other side of the greatest despair. It is, of course, something more than despair, a joy, a sense of creative life and power. I might even say a security and certainty, beyond any imagining. But this is a way of feeling which the will and the imagination are as unable to bring about as to make one's bones grow or decrease the speed of the pulse. They must happen by themselves. In the same way, all that is positive, the whole creative content of that spiritual experience which is called awakening, nirvana, must of necessity happen by itself. It not only cannot, but must not be induced by trying and willing, since anything that one could will wouldn't be it. That was good. I should have read that in the God episode. Actually, that was really good. We'll keep going here. So I think there's a lot of great proverbs in here. This one says, it's like a sword that wounds but cannot wound itself, like an eye that sees but cannot see itself. I like this because these double meanings are like a sword can't wound itself from the start. You know what I mean? So to say it's a sword that wounds but cannot wound itself, the whole sentence is unnecessary. Because you can't, a sword doesn't wound itself. You know what I mean? That's just not something that happens. And so when you think that your mind can hurt itself, or that your mind could ever be against you in any sort of way that a sword could, go against you or the sword itself, it's that's not how your brain works. That's not how you work. That's not how your body works. You are in control. You are holding the sword, and it's that simple, Like an eye that sees but cannot see itself. Everyone, that's just common sense. What sees cannot see itself. Unless, in reflection, but that's just a reflection of itself and not the real thing. And so, it's the source cannot act upon itself. And that's you, you're the source. So, use your mind as a tool and don't let it use you as a tool. Good intentions. Ooh, I highlighted a lot on this page. So this one was about Zen Buddhism, which is a great teaching. A great teaching. I love it. And a lot of it is very simple. It's all the same. It's all one basic thing that's to be revealed through kind of those double meanings. They call it a double bind. To just put you in the position of a double bind so you realize oh, I'm trying too hard. And so it says, a disciple came to Zen Master Chao Chu, and asked, I have just come to this monastery. Would you mind giving me some instruction, please? The master replied, have you eaten your breakfast yet or not? Yes, I have, sir. Then wash your dishes. It is said that as a result of this remark, the disciple was suddenly enlightened to the entire meaning of Zen. Oh, this is my absolute favorite Zen story. On another occasion, a master was about to address an assembly of students when a bird began to sing in a nearby tree. The master remained silent until the bird had finished, and then announcing that his address had been given, went away. That is my favorite one because it's we just try so hard to find the thing or point at the thing or give it some form or give it some, we do that at every day, at all times of the day. We try and form our day out instead of just live it. Try and form our life out instead of just live it. And only in living it can it really gain any true form, He said he is teaching his disciples to know life directly. And so that's what it means, like, have you eaten your breakfast yet or not? Yes, I have. Then wash your dishes. It's like, just live your life. Like, stop trying to be taught how to live your life. Just live it. Like, you'll learn, Stop being so fearful. And also, it's like, we all like have the same tools. Like, no one has like an innately better understanding of their life than you do of yours. On this page, she said, "It is the understanding of the one which lies behind the many, which is unity. The bringing together of opposites, of subject and object, the ego and the universe, to create the holy child." That's good. All right, I'll get a few more and we'll move on. He's just such a good writer. I could probably do this all day. Let's read this. I actually don't know exactly what this says. I just saw it. "Indeed, there is no prescription for enlightenment, for as soon as we start saying that this is this or it is not this, we try to make two realities in the universe instead of one. In fact, you can think about philosophy or about eating and drinking. You can love mankind or you can hate it. You can do as you like. You can do as you don't like. You can discipline yourself. You can run wild. You can seek wisdom. You can ignore it. But you cannot diverge from the Tao. For everything, anything, and nothing is Tao. Is it? Beware of that is. The sting is in the tail." And so I think I'm actually just understanding this because this chapter was about the parable of the cow's tail. And it talks about how when a cow goes to the enclosure, the edge of its enclosure of the abyss, its horns, head, and hoof all pass through. But why can't the tail also pass? Commenting on this, the old master says, "If a cow runs, it will fall into the trench. If it returns, it will be butchered. That tail is a very strange thing." And so it's like, for some reason, whenever you, like, I think this is supposed to represent how we're all doomed for death, right? Because we are, like, and the tail is essentially like the completion of the picture, right? Because you get the head, the horns, the hoof, you have the whole picture except for the tail. And so it's like, it's not necessarily like a cow. It's like, it's almost a cow. It's almost finished. It's almost, you know what I mean? Like, it's in action. The same way we are. Like, you're not who you are. You're kind of like this non-static version of who you are. Like, you're not complete yet, and you won't be. And only when you view yourself as a complete being will you realize, or not necessarily will you realize, but like, it just gets more grim, because once he's a cow, he only has two choices: to fall into the trench or to be butchered. And so it's like, you can't win, so just do, like, essentially what you want, because it won't matter anyway. And then that tail getting caught in the gate is also a representation of how you can't escape the one thing, the Tao. Like, there's no other place to be besides here. Because you do have some form. Like, you are here at the end of the day, so it's like you can't really, you can't go anywhere else. And you only have two options. Oh, I encourage you all right now, write this down or something. Look up The Second Immortal by Alan Watts. It's just one of his chapters, but it's a great story. All right, let that rest. Hmm. I have two more books here by Alan Watts. I haven't finished this one. Cloud Hidden, Whereabouts Unknown, a Mountain Journal. And in this one, he just went off to some mountains in California. And I mean, this writing is beautiful. You can tell he was like in his writing element here. Gonna go fix the camera here. We're good. White turns a little bit. Anyway, you can tell he was in his writing element in this one for sure. Let me see if I can find something good. My death will be a disappearance of a particular pattern in the water. I like this one because it's like, that's that oneness we were just talking about. How we're all part of the same thing. But we still have some form, you're still like something. There's still some of you. Oh, I love this one. For the job of compassion in a sick society, only the dead need apply. That's good. That is good. But who made God? Change the question a little, realizing that God is eternal, and ask, who makes God? You do. Yeah, I mean, he was. How does one enter the Tao? He answered, do you hear the sound of the stream? Why, yes. There is the way to enter. No one writes better. Gravity is the root of lightness. This was one of the best chapters I've probably ever read. He spoke of how just that gravity is the root of lightness, which is to say that you have to master gravity to appear to be free from it. You know what I mean? And that's just that's exactly how life works. Well, there's a term I highlighted. He called it, I don't know what practice he's speaking on. I would imagine it's some sort of Taoism or Buddhism. And he called this attitude toward life might be called psychophysical judo. Which, if you guys don't know, judo arose from China, which also is where Taoism arose from. And they kind of share the same idea, which is just to use your body as a vessel for the outside sources in a way that claims you the victor. I don't think I got much further than that, actually. All right. And then we have This Is It. This was essays on Zen and spiritual experience. This one was really, really good. Really good. Let me see if I can pull a few out of this one. As we now know him, the human being seems to be a trap to catch himself. That's definitely a modern day predicament. And he wrote all of his books back in the 50s and 60s. So it's insane how accurate they are to today's world. All right. We will move on to... Actually, we'll finish my books here first. So next I have the Book of Five Rings. Now, I train combat sports, so this was very useful to me, but if you're a young man, or a young woman, but definitely, I'm a young man, obviously, so it's easier to say. As a young man, I don't know if I don't know. I'm not a girl. I wouldn't know. But no, if you're a young man, this is something you absolutely need to read. This is written by Miyamoto Musashi. He was an infamous dueler during the time of the samurai. And I think he dueled from 13, I want to say, to 39. He never lost once. He was something like 0, and I don't know. He never lost. He always prevailed. And I think there's also like a story of him defeating 70 men at once. So there's that. But no, yeah, you read this book and you understand how he could ever do that. Well, and also he speaks of the way, which is really interesting because it falls in line. It's like he found Taoism in being a warrior, and he goes to explain that in this book, because he talks about how when you see the way, that's the name he gave it, the way. He said when you see the way, you see it in all things. And I really think that the way that he's talking about in this book is the same way that, Nirvana, Satori, it's the same thing. It's just in this specific paradigm of existence, as a samurai. And so on this page he says, from the point of view of straightforward human reason, things such as preference for extra long swords or extra short swords, preferences for force or yielding, concern with crudeness and fineness, are all biased paths. So even if I do not reveal them as the initiatory or inner lore of the other schools, everybody should know about them. Yeah, no, everything he says in this book is it's well thought out, it's important. He does repeat himself here and there, but it's important if he does. And it only happens really towards the end of the book, but this is a good one. Focus of the eyes in martial arts. The observing eye is stronger, the perceiving eye is weaker. A specialty of martial arts is to see that which is far away closely and to see which is nearby from a distance. And that is so important in almost all things, to be able to look outward while you're, in the inside of a situation. And then when you're on the outside of a situation, to imagine yourself inward, and to see it from all angles and not just to make a judgment based on where you stand. Of course, I had to add the Tao Te Ching in here. I'm not going to read out of this one. We already did. So, if you're new, this was episode 1 with terrible audio. I apologize. But, yeah, the Tao Te Ching is a good one. I will read my favorite verse, just one, I swear. Verse 43. I don't even need to look. The most yielding thing in the world will overcome the most rigid. The most empty thing in the world will overcome the most full. From this comes a lesson. Stillness benefits more than action. Silence benefits more than words. And so I say, rare indeed are those who are silent. Rare indeed are those who are still. Oh no, and then so I say comes after that. And then he says, rare indeed are those who obtain the bounty of this world. That's a good one. I won't get too into this one, but I do also think that everyone should read this book if you want to. I don't know. After I read this book, this is The 48 Laws of Power, by the way, by Robert Greene. And I will say, once you open this and you read these rules, you're going to think they're evil. And you're going to think that if you read it, you're going to become evil. And you're going to think that no good person could ever read this book. But after reading, I haven't finished. I'm most of the way through. But after reading it, a lot of these rules, I've realized, it's not all they're not all to be used to gain power. A lot of them are to kind of give you the vision, to see who uses these kind of things. and then there's also like a reversal at the end of all of them too. So it's like you see, you see, you see how many people around you use power schemes in your relationship when that's completely unnecessary. And, you start to look at those people not differently, but you just start to see them, for who they are. Because it's not every power scheme is complete evil, It's like, but it's like, you want that vision, trust me, you want that vision. To be able to see like, oh, they do this for the benefit of having power in this situation. On this page it says, Lord, protect me from my friends. I can take care of my enemies. And that's good. That happens a lot in this book, I will say. A lot of betrayal. And it will definitely give you some trust issues. A lot of kings being betrayed by their best men. Stuff like that. So the next teacher I wanted to talk about is Ram Dass. He is really where I go for, anything that I've learned that's extremely spiritual or emotional wisdom. I'd like to say that's probably the best things I've taken from what I've learned from him. And so I've got a few quotes by him. As you dissolve into love, your ego fades. Not thinking about love, just being in love, radiating like the sun. And so he was very good at the idea of love, I think, and the idea of divine union and giving up the ghost when it comes to a relationship. You can do it like it's a great weight on you or like it's part of the dance. And that too, he was really good at explaining the idea of the dance of Shiva, where we're just kind of in a dance with reality rather than in some sort of, push-pull relationship. The next teacher I've got on here is Terence McKenna. He was an ethnobotanist back in the day. Older guy. He talked about mushrooms and DMT a lot. I listened to one lecture where he talked about how he took DMT at the peak of an LSD trip in order to try and make it last longer. And it just kind of, usually a DMT trip will happen inside your mind, but because he was on both, it like brought it out to reality. Yeah, he's a crazy guy, but he's extremely smart. And he's delved into the realm of psychedelics more deeply than anyone I've ever found. So he's got a great quote that says, "You don't know enough to worry." Like, who do you think you are to worry? And I like that. I like how he was very... Oh, we're back. Video ended. I'm just going to reread because I don't know where to stop. But Terence McKenna, nothing lasts, but nothing is lost. And I feel like overall of his psychedelic experiences, it seemed that what he gained the most was that, it was interestingly enough, a feeling of unity with all things and the things around him and the things in his life. And he's a great teacher when it comes to psychedelics and the analysis of psychedelic thought. I'm trying to use all the right words here. We've got Greg Plitt. So this is for all the people that go to the gym. SoundCloud, something, I don't know. Look up Greg Plitt. He was one of the realest bodybuilders I think I've ever seen. Like he was always just talking about how like you need to go your absolute hardest because life is short and you're only gonna you need to reach your maximum potential. And like you only get one life, you only get one chance. You were blessed with the opportunity of potential. Do not waste it. And all of his talks are great. And he actually died at 31 filming a video. It was like an accident. He was ran over by a train. And so all of his speeches hit so much harder because you realize like he was like, he lived the path he spoke of. He was like, he always talked about how life could be taken from you at any moment and how you need to do your best today so that if tomorrow is the day, you'll know. And that happened for him at such a young age, it's like, you can know that he did his best, so there's like also some positivity in that. But David Goggins, everyone knows about David Goggins. Very self-explanatory. I mean, just strive to be more like him. Strive to put that mindset in yourself, and that was a pretty basic teacher. I don't know why I put him on here. But Jordan Peterson is one of my favorite teachers. I'd have to say I should have ranked these. If I had to rank them, it would be Alan Watts first, and then Andrew Tate, and then Jordan Peterson, and then Terrence McKenna. Top 5. But Jordan Peterson, let's see if I can give you some good examples. He did good on a lot of his podcasts. I like. He has his own podcast. There is an episode on Nietzsche, Dostoevsky, and another philosopher or writer or something of the sort. It's like episode 280 or something. That one is really good. And then all of his episodes on Joe Rogan are exceptional, especially the one with Brett Weinstein, where they talk about the truth. I highly recommend you listen to that podcast. That was a really good one. Yeah, Jordan Peterson is, if you don't know who Jordan Peterson is, I think he's a psychologist and a professor in Canada. And he's had a lot of controversy with the universities up there because they were trying to, I believe he wasn't using someone's pronouns or something like that. Or he spoke out against pronouns and controlled speech, and he lost his job. And so, yeah, that's that's how he blew up, essentially. And then next I have Andrew Tate. To me, I think modern men need Andrew Tate. Just even if you think you're the fucking man, he usually has something good to say that I haven't even thought about, His takes on things are, and I think it's because of his abrasive nature. He's not scared to just completely say the absolute truth. And I think that in this society today, we have, even myself, have gotten used to a layer of necessary sugarcoating so that the people around you feel better about themselves because they are also ignoring the truth. But Andrew Tate is very good at just speaking the bare bones truth and getting right down to the facts and just being a good man. So, I mean, if you hate him, you should listen to him. If you don't hate him, you should listen to him. And then Joe Rogan. The JRE podcast, I've listened to so many episodes. I think I always consider the idea that Joe Rogan is the best interviewer to ever live. And his podcast is kind of like a library of intelligence because of the way he conducts his interviews. He conducts them in a manner that he is just a mirror for his guest. And he dives into them enough to ask all of the best questions while letting them speak their mind, and he always seems to react in the right way. If they say something entirely crazy or out of pocket, he'll question them, And I remember on the episode with Bob Lazar, it's in the 1500s, he questioned Bob a lot. And I thought that was not in a way that was he specifically doubted him, just in a way that was he wanted to make sure that Bob wasn't lying about anything. And so, yeah, I mean, say what you want about Joe Rogan, but he is one of the greatest interviewers, I think, ever. So, and he kind of relates to that Alan Watts quote of the perfect man employs his mind as a mirror. And, I mean, as far as a perfect man goes, his name is Joe. He has a golden retriever. You know what I mean? He's just I don't know. Something about the guy, you know what I mean? But my last one on the list is Luke Belmar. Now, he's a young crypto, like a millionaire, but he always has good takes. He always has a good mindset and good thought process. And I just thought I would throw him on here because whenever I see something of him, I never skip it. I usually like listen to what he has to say. It's usually something of value. So, yeah, I think that is all I got for you guys. I think that's the longest episode, too. I think that beats the God episode, counting part 1 and part 2. But I hope that helped. I hope I gave you some good teachers. Yeah, the next episode, I believe, will be on the necessity of actions over words. Let's see. I'll give you some insight on what I've got cooking here. I've got one on karma. That's going to be a long one. I love the idea of karma. I think it's a great lesson to be learned. All right, and then hold on. I got one more I might be able to share. Let me see. Pride is a motivator and making an enemy. I want to leave you with that thought because it won't be out for a few more weeks. To really succeed in life and achieve your goals and become who you want to be, I think you need to make an enemy of, not necessarily of the world, but in the world. You need to understand that no matter what your goal is, there is someone out there who wants it. Probably more than you. And they probably work harder, and they probably stay in the gym a little bit longer, and they probably read more pages than you do. They eat a little more on that bulk, and they eat a little less on their cut. There's somebody out there who wants what you want. And if you have big dreams and big goals, and the goal that you want or the position you want to be in, there's only one spot. Like, you have to outwork that guy, or he's going to come and take everything you've ever worked for because he did it a little bit harder each time, and you don't want to be a victim of that. And so I think that that's important to think in your mind, not necessarily that someone, just take it to the extreme. If you're the bigger your goal, the bigger the enemy. If you have to make the world your enemy in order to see, and the thing is like sometimes the things around you don't benefit you. Sometimes you're stuck in a job where it's the best financial decision for you to be, but it's not the best mental decision. And so maybe what you need to do is make an enemy, just put your head down. You don't have to talk to them. You don't have to engage with them. You don't have to be friends with them. You're allowed to dislike things and dislike people and dislike places. Like, you're allowed to say no to things and make an enemy of it and say, no, I'm not fucking with you. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not for me strictly. Like you're something that, and it's like some things are a poison as well in some people. And so it's like, you don't even want them in your friend group, like that one friend that your buddy brings around that you really don't fuck with, or stuff goes missing every time he comes around. It's like you have to do two things. Get rid of that guy at all costs and consider if someone else is willing to put up with this guy, is that someone I want to keep around? Like, you got to be willing to cut people off and cut places off, and you got to be willing to say no and to make an enemy, and to, like, there is a part of life that isn't positive, and it's like dark and gloomy, and it's just clawing and scratching and biting and fighting, and there's shit that has to be done, and you have to do it. And it's not always going to be easy, and it's not always going to be right. It's not always going to be, you know what I mean? Like, there's sometimes you have to someone else has to lose if you want to win. That's just the reality of life. Like, when you enter a competitive space, somebody has to lose. Somebody has to go home with their head hanging. Just make sure it's not you. Like, I remember this. Oh, he's not on here. But Inky Johnson. I just found this guy on TikTok. He's one of the best motivational speakers I've ever heard in my life. And he said this thing the other day that stuck with me. And he said, work to separate. And that's exactly this is like, fuck the pack, fuck the herd, fuck what everyone else is doing. They're going to do 2 hours, I'm going to do 3. They're going to go once a day, I'm going to go twice a day. Like, do more, work to separate, make an enemy of average. Make an enemy of what you don't want to be so that you will never end up there under any circumstances. So, yeah, I'm going to leave y'all with that. I'm out.